Greetings, everybody. My name is Desiree Dorion, and I am your host of the CCMA Achimotak Conversation Series in honor and celebration of Indigenous History Month. Achimotak is Swampy Cree for Let's Talk About It Together. Today's guest has over 250 cuts to his name. He won the SOCAN Award for Country Music. He's a two-time CCMA Songwriter of the Year nominee. He's a producer, jack of all trades. Please welcome the extraordinary Troy Kokol. How are you doing, Troy?
Thanks, Desiree. I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for joining me. This is
Yeah,
a historic event.
yeah,
CCMA is using their platform for us to have these conversations, and I'm really thankful that you could be here for part of this.
yeah.
So you and I have met in passing at CCMA events previously. You were hanging out with our friend Jerry Soretta.
Yep, yep.
And I think we've met in passing again at some Indigenous Music Award events as well.
Yep.
But we've never formally been introduced. So it is really nice to meet you.
Yeah, for sure. Your name has come across my feed many times, so it's always great to meet you again, see you again. So
in the digital world, in the new world that we're in.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I find we always start with in the Indigenous community is, where are you from? So can we start there?
Yeah, totally. I'm from Calgary. I've been here now for about 18 years, and then was born and raised in Red Deer till I was about 13, and then went to the Northwest Territories for a period of time, and then came back to Alberta and settled in Calgary for quite a while. So
I got to ask, Northwest Territories, where were you in Northwest Territories?
Right in smack dab in the middle of Yellowknife. Went to school with Susan the Gluekark. Had a crush on her. She didn't know I existed, which was par for the course. But it was a good time.
That's awesome. So you know what, we have something in common. I lived in Northwest Territories as a kid when I was about 3 years old for about 2 years. So there you go, in Fort Simpson. Anyway, cool. We're not here to talk about that. You made an Instagram post a few days ago, and I want to ask you about it. And you talked specifically about growing up as a Métis kid in Red Deer.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the post I think really is about my take on Indigenous issues, and especially with the 215 children's remains that were found in Kamloops. I've always struggled with these issues, and I think part of it is that there's a big chunk of me that's always felt disconnected, and that disconnection comes because of the fact that my mother had always really sheltered me from the experiences that she had as a child. And it came up, her and I were talking. It was my birthday last weekend, and we were chatting about the 215 children and talking about residential schools. And then I knew that her grandparents were part of a residential school, and then she told me a little bit about how they had escaped from their from the school, and how they had ran away to the northern United States and tried to find work, and didn't have a lot of success, ended up sneaking back into Canada, and at that time the borders were a lot more loose than they are today, and they ended up settling in the Rocky Mountain House area, which was where a large group of the Fleury clan sort of blossomed. But the thing about it that really struck me in our conversation was that when I think about that, when I thought about the children, and I thought about the pain and the suffering that those kids went through, and how as when generationally that pain gets passed down, and it manifests itself in many ways, and my mom was lucky for me. My mom was able to shelter me from it. But I think the thing that kind of struck me about it was how difficult it would have been for her to find the the fortitude to say, to sort of stand on the hill and say, okay, this is where the cycle ends. And she went and sought counseling as a child, as a young person, and and unfortunately, had to distance herself from the, our community. So, and for me, that post was really just about expressing that, and just, kind of expressing my understanding of it, and what my part is in all of it, because I, all I can do is just, honor that, the pain that they've gone through, but also too, to talk about it, and to share that, because I think that's how we learn and grow. So
yeah.
yeah.
You mentioned that it meant that you were that the benefit of being sheltered from by your mother also meant that you were disconnected from the community. Does that feel like a double-edged sword?
100%, because I think the thing is that, when it comes to Indigenous communities in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, and as well, and I'm sure all communities, but I know in Alberta specifically, is that that community has a stereotype, and there's a and the stereotype is negative. And so when you grow up with and my mother did it for pure good reasons, was to keep me away from it, not the culture, but necessarily more to our family. But what ends up happening for me is that growing up is that I'm not connected to it. So, but I am Métis. So it's almost like there's this part of me that I have to sort of ignore and deny. Of course, yourself, or I'm sure anyone that's Indigenous has experienced, racism and jokes and all that kind of stuff. And you grow up to just learn to live with it. But I think the other side of it is that, you get further and further away from understanding what that culture really is about. And it hasn't been until the last few years that I've really immersed myself in the community that I've actually gotten to understand, like, some of the cool things about the culture. And it's it's a new thing. So yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. That although I was saved for experiencing some of that stuff as a child, there's the other side of it where I have to relearn what the culture is about in my own way.
Yeah. And you said in the last few years that you have been doing that. How are you finding your way back to culture?
Yeah. I think, it's one little bit at a time, learning and listening, and just, the lessons have come here, actually listening to elders speak at different summits or conferences, and just hearing them talk about, our relationship with the land. It's so interesting to me now when we're talking about climate change and, all the things that are happening to this planet that we're destroying. It's interesting to me that, that culturally, the native cultures was on top of that forever, and to hear them say that, hey, we're part of this planet, we what we do to it is what we do to ourselves. And I'm just like, wow, it's incredibly wise. And so for me, getting to learn those bits and pieces, and getting to understand it in that way has been really cool. But it's been slow, and also too, because I've just been sort of tiptoeing my way, through, not tiptoeing, but just, kind of dipping my toe into the pool here and there, and trying to figure out where I fit in all of it too. Because the truth is that, there's a big part of me that doesn't feel like I fit in all of it, and it's no one's fault. It's just really, my situation and how I've entered into it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that really resonated with me in reading your Instagram post is that I think your story is exemplary of the fact that we as Indigenous people, our experiences are so vast, and they're so dissimilar in so many ways that there is not a single Indigenous experience. We're not this pan-Indigenous group of people. And for me, when I was doing my research about you, and when I came across this Instagram post, that was the message that I took away, was that reminder that we are all so different.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other side of it is that, you know, as I'm moving forward in this community, you know, I feel like a big part of what you know could happen in the future with being able to get you know more people involved is having that ability or that comfort level for people to express themselves, you know, artistically, but be able to feel like there's a place for me here. You know, because I came into the music business as a writer, you know, with a cut on radio, and you know, it had nothing to do with me being Indigenous.
Right.
You know, me connecting with the Indigenous community was sort of almost I did it kind of backwards, and so you know, I would love to see you know us continue as a you know as a community to have those you know those avenues in place for people that want to you know express themselves artistically and feel safe to do that, you know. So
Yeah, absolutely. What was it about the remains of 215 Indigenous children being found at the Kamloops Residential School that prompted you to discuss this story so openly, like discuss your story so openly?
yeah, you know, it's interesting because when I read it, and you know, it's social media. I'm a music artist, and you know, my first reaction was like, and it always was my first reaction is like I try to be very, you know, as sort of transparent and you know as normal as I can when I'm on social media, and you know we're promoting ourselves as artists, and so a part of me is very you know was very cautious about like I don't want to use this thing as like a way to you know get engaged you know my audience, you know, so because it's I just didn't feel like I wanted to be careful of that. um and I think the other side of it is that it's just incredibly tragic. I mean, this is
Yeah.
I'm not trying to compare it to anything historically, but it is, you know, it is a reminder that, you know, that whatever was going on there was, I mean, it's basically serial murder, you know, it's like that we're
Yeah.
talking about some pretty serious acts of violence, and I felt heavy about it. And I think the reason why I wanted to say something about it is because I think there are probably people in my situation that are Indigenous but didn't necessarily experience firsthand any of these atrocities. And I think that, you know, for me it's a way to express, you know, sort of where I'm at with it. But I think also too it just I feel like it's important for people to talk about it, you know, for people to understand that it's like we've got a ways to go, and that, you know, we need to acknowledge, you know, in order to heal, we need to acknowledge what's going on and just talk about it, but then also try to find ways to, you know, to capture that history and always remember that it's like, hey, this happened and we have to remember not to go back there, you know. So I
Yeah.
think it's, you know, it's my small part of just trying to, you know, do what I can to share that with the people that I'm connected to in the business that maybe are non-Aboriginal.
I hope that that is the the positive spin that comes out of this, quite candidly. I mean, I think that we have been in this rut as a country for so many years, and we're seeing progress on so many different fronts. Like, I live in a small town, and I'm seeing people that have never spoken openly about, you know, their opposition to racism and support of Indigenous people, who are coming out and saying this was wrong.
Yeah.
And if anything that we take away from that as a country, I hope it's that.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree. I think the other side of it too is that, you know, you've got this you know period of time where this huge vast minority of people all across the country were, you know, corralled together, and this there's this, you know, this huge hurt that is, you know, committed you know years ago, and we're still living out that pain every, you know, generationally it's passed down, whether it's through addictions or it's through poverty or it's through a lack of education. And that's really what I got to with, you know, when I was talking with my mom, is that, you know, this pain that was, you know, created, you know, hundreds of years ago or 100 years ago is being passed down, but we have not found a place where we're at peace. And I'm talking not just the Indigenous community, I'm talking everybody.
Everybody,
You know,
yeah.
we haven't found a place where we've, you know, admitted and acknowledged it, and, you know, sort of figured out a way that we can, you know, get to a place of peace, right? So it's just kind of a big realization, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think the more that you learn as an Indigenous artist, do you think that you're going to start seeing some of that in your art?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, I mean, it's not funny, but it was when I first got into the Indigenous community. You know, like there was a few artists that I saw that I'm like, wow, I really dig that person's vibe. And, you know, they're not. I found that one thing I loved about the community is it's not super full of itself.
Mm.
You know, that's very supportive. And the one thing that I caught right away was that, you know, like I was at a show where Buffy St. Marie had some nominations, and I was listening to her music, and really everybody that was there was so interested in talking about, you know, their story, or about, you know, doing something with their music that was beyond sort of like, you know, putting out something on the radio and doing a show and getting on radio, which is how I came into the music business, was exactly that. You know, it was the whole business side of it. So I definitely feel like, you know, I've got you know, some work that I'm working on now that's yeah, I want to inject some really messages that I've had for a long time that I just really didn't know where to express it. So I'm excited about that.
I look forward to seeing it. I look
Yeah.
forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
So how do you go then from you know, a Métis kid growing up in Red Deer, Calgary, Northwest Territories, to being like a hit songwriter? How do you do that?
Well, for myself, it was a real happy accident. And, you know, because my wife and we wrote a song, and I met this guy who was just starting up a label and just signed this new artist, and it was really serendipitous, um, how we got into the business, and the fact that, you know, this song that we wrote, it blew up on radio. And so it's like all of a sudden we're just like, okay, I'm working at the city of Calgary, and, you know, we've got a song that's, you know, shot up to the top 10 for, you know, 3 months. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what to do with this, because it's like, I'm not going to quit my job and be a songwriter, you know, because I'm like, you know, it's like, I like
Working, okay,
yeah,
the song that we're talking about, first of all, is Pickup Truck.
yes. Yeah.
And you were working at the time that that song.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was that song. So I kind of, you know, when it was sort of done, it was, you know, we finished it on a Tuesday. I met the guy, Joni actually met the guy the week before, and we sent him the thing, sent him the work tape. And it was so, like I say, it was so serendipitous and so dissimilar to how I get songs placed on radio now.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a real, you know, miracle, God, fate, destiny thing. And yeah, we were working our jobs, and all of a sudden it's like we get this nomination. Well, someone said you're in the top 30, and I'm like, okay, I had no frame of reference whether or not that meant anything. It's like, okay, well, I'm going back to work, you know. So it's like, I don't, you know. So
I gotta ask, what job were you doing at the time?
I worked at the development building and plan. I have like a couple of diplomas in architectural technology and building development. So like construction, that's all I've ever done in my life, you know. And it's, you know, I've been musical somewhat, you know, here and there in my life, but it was really just like, you know, so working at the city was all about taking in building permits, and you know, I used to run a call center where we would help, you know, people applying for stuff. And so it's like, yeah. And so, but the music got to a point where it was like, okay, I either had to do it or not do it,
right.
because it was too much. And so, yeah, our company is called Reluctant Cowboy Music, and it's legit because it's like, I don't know if I want to do this, you know. It's like, you know, it's like, do you ever see musicians? They're all skinny and broke, you know. It's like, I don't know that I want to do this, you know. So we joke
I
about
love that.
so it's our little inside joke. So yeah. So
So you have over 250 cuts.
yeah, yeah,
Just a little number.
yeah, it's weird, like as time goes on, because I've always, like, for the first longest time I was just doing it after work and at weekends, and at some point, you get to this place where it's like, okay, like I'm working 20-30 hours a week on the music, and then my 40-hour a week job, and I was burning out.
Yeah.
And and I don't attribute my success to me being like super talented, or I think, if anything, I love it and I work hard. I'm definitely the kind of person. It's like, I get up usually 5:30 ish, 6 in the morning. I knock off at 6 or 7, because I'm passionate about it. I if I was making money, or I wasn't, I love doing it. So I think a lot of any success that we have is really, I'm not trying to be self-deprecating, but I'm just saying that, I think a lot of it comes, more of what I have, what we've accomplished has been really because of, just, working on, trying to work hard and trying to improve and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think like anything else, your life is, my experience is unique, and we could have moved to the US and tried to chase a publishing deal years ago, but we just decided that we wanted to stay here and be with our families, and because Canada's great, the music community, the Indigenous music community, we're so lucky to be able to have this, the systems and the grant systems in place to create art and not, suffer,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
so many people do in other countries. So
So 250 cuts. That means, like, that's someone has recorded them. Those have been placed in film or television.
that's right.
How many songs do you have to write to have 250 cuts?
Yeah, you do. Well, I would say that as a writer, I'm probably, like, I'm a pretty slow writer. I'm not like like, sometimes the inspiration will hit me and I'll just spit it out. But I would say generally, the one of the things that I find that has helped me get music onto recorded works or TV or whatever has been rewriting. I'm very much, and I didn't invent that. I learned that from pros that have, I got advice from, but I really spend a lot of time, questioning what I'm doing. Like, is it good enough? Is this interesting enough? Can I improve it? Can I improve it? And so I think that having that ability or that willingness to look at what you're doing and to say, I can do better. I think I can, because creatively and talent wise, you're only at a certain place in your life. And so I think really what it means is that if you're willing to dig as deep as you can and absolutely leave nothing, no stone left unturned, then, generally I've found that I've had more success with it, so.
That's really good advice. Rewriting, not being afraid to be your own worst critic.
Yeah. And honestly,
Yeah.
like I rewrite stuff that I've had, for 10 years, and I've had song ideas that I've, written and written and written. And then it's like, I'll bring it to an artist. I just literally had a fellow, call me. It's like, I'm cutting this song, and I had it for about 10 years, wrote it, rewrote it, tossed it, and then I brought it to this co-write, and we finished it. And so, yeah, it was, but I think had I not put the work into it and, tried to get it to a place where it was half decent, then I, probably wouldn't have landed on the recording. So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there one song in particular that you can name that you're most proud of?
It's sort of a weird song, but it's called Lonely Ghost, and it's the title track of, it's my second CD, but I pulled the first CD because my first CD, I produced and did everything myself, and I'm actually remixing it all, because I do all my own engineering and mastering now. So I'm re-releasing that later. But so the only CD I've got out right now is called Lonely Ghost, and the title track is like, I love it because I wrote the bulk of it in about 10 minutes.
Mm.
And I was in a Starbucks, And I was just, this is an exercise that I do as a songwriter, is that I'll go into a place, lots of noise, lots of things going on, and I'll just type or write exactly on my phone. I'll write exactly how I'm feeling. And sometimes it's shocking. Like I've written almost whole songs in just minutes. But I think what it is about is that creatively I've tried to teach myself to just turn the tap on. And I think the way that happens is that you just try not to edit. You just be as honest and as vulnerable as you can in the moment, and amazing stuff comes out. So anyways, but I wrote that song, and it's just a weird tune, and it's just like, I'm broken and bleeding and writhing and reeling and huffing and heaving, so busted, no feeling could ever describe this feeling inside. It's exactly like that. So I was proud of that, because it's like, I failed poetry in high school. I actually got 37%. And I tried like really hard. I got A's in everything, but like, and like Mrs. Deeth, my poetry teacher, was like, okay, we're going to see, I got like A's on all my English 30, like the top marks. And I was so proud of myself. And then poetry came, and it was like 37%. I'm like, wow. So yeah, it was like, that's so.
But that's a good lesson, though, that just
Yeah.
because you don't succeed at something immediately doesn't mean that you can't work at it and improve and get better and hone your craft. I mean, I think that's a perfect example of honing your craft.
Totally.
I love the metaphor too of like turning on a faucet and just letting it all pour out. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and I think the big thing is too, is it's fear. Why did I fail in poetry? It's because, being creative is all about abandoning your fears. If you can abandon your fear in the moment of creation, you can say exactly what's in your heart, and you can see the details in the experience that you have, and you can articulate them freely without having somebody, and I always tell people, it's like when you're creating, if you're having writer's block, it's because you've got the child in the room is playing, but then you let the adult in, and the adult's like, no, don't do that, or don't say that, that's not cool, or whatever. And so what ends up happening is that you're trying to be creative and joyful and honest, but then you've got this thing in the room that's like, so I always tell people, it's like, let the child play. And that's what that whole idea of going into Starbucks and just typing exactly how you feel, is that you're just letting your child express itself, and then go in after and then say, okay, well, is there something here that is usable? And you can put your business songwriter hat on after. But if you have those two elements in the room at the same time, you're doomed. So
I'm gonna think about that the next time I sit down and write a song.
Yeah,
I'm literally gonna visualize that in my mind.
Yeah. You're the parent in the room telling you, no, it's not cool enough.
Get out.
Yes. Yeah. I'm writing my next record. It's like, Don Amaro would never say that. Rewrite it.
Rewrite it. That's not good enough for Don.
Yes, exactly.
So going back to the like, I'm blown away. 250 cuts is crazy by anybody's standards. That's an insane amount of songs to have cut. How often are you writing?
I'm writing all the time. I guess, for me, writing is a weird, so like if let's say it's like Desiree and we're going to work on a record, and it's like we're writing for it. And typically what I'll do, in those situations, is I'll get writers from the US or in town or whoever, and we'll have like a camp, and we'll have 2 writes in the morning, 2 writes in the afternoon. We'll do that 3 days in a row for however many days. And so we'll just pump out a bunch of music. When I'm writing for me, that's like always, like I'm always sort of, I've got a phone that's full of ideas, and I've got like, I've got way too much music for, any, my projects. And so I think part of that, that the process is really just about, constantly, thinking about like, and it always stems from how I feel. Like I felt one day that it was like, that somebody, this person in my life was taking advantage of me. And it was my fault. I owned it. So, but, I ended up writing coming up with what I thought was a really cool idea, a song idea out of it. And so that, for me, that's my that's how I create, is just constantly, trying to articulate, what's going on upstairs. Right. So
It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the more you.
yeah, yeah. And I think the more that especially now that I'm sort of doing this, more or less full time, that, it's just, um, I really have come to appreciate the idea of being an artist, and the idea behind, it's like, in order for me to really truly connect with people out there, I really need to become comfortable with understanding where I fit in all of this, and what I have to say about it, that's honest, and is something that, has integrity, that someone else will be able to feel like trust when it's coming out of my mouth. Right.
Right.
So,
We'll be able to resonate with that. Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, I've mentioned your success, the 250 cuts, the SOCAN Award for Country Music, being a 2-time CCMA nominee for Songwriter of the Year. Do you? And I also, because I said I was stalking your Instagram, discovered that you produced the #1 song in Australia for Haley Jensen.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting, so we met through a mutual friend, and we wrote a tune, and it was like, yeah, so we ended up writing one song, and I produced it for her as well. And it got her higher on the charts than she'd ever been. And she got a #1, she was the top Australian for the couple weeks there. And yeah, so I ended up, we Joni and myself, and we ended up writing a bunch of songs, and I produced and mixed the rest of the record, which is going to be out in a little while. So that's a really, that was just a really great byproduct of working with Haley. And she's so incredibly talented. She's been on The Voice and Idol, and so she's really had a very successful career, and she's a really cool lady too. So
with all that success, do you feel like you have had any barriers being an Indigenous person in country music?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that because I came into it sort of sideways, barriers for me have been more about my disconnection with the culture, and having to come at it, because one of the most difficult things for me was when I first got into the business, I was working with an Indigenous artist, Shane Yellowbird, and we would go to an Indigenous ceremony, or we go to an Indigenous event, and everything that everybody was talking about was completely foreign to me, and I couldn't help but feel a little shameful about it. I think if there were any barriers, part of it, because when we're thinking about barriers, I think, to me, barriers, going back to what we were talking about previously, when you've got a feeling of despair, when despair is sort of like the core value of what your decision making is based on, and when you grow up in a community, that is your fundamental belief is that you are less than other people. It's, I think, the most difficult part of trying to come into this business and have success was just, for me, was just making sense of all of that, and trying to understand, it's like, it's okay to feel like I'm disconnected to it, because I am disconnected. And so, but I think accepting that, but I think the other step for me, was really just saying, that trying to understand in my mind, it's like, what happened in the past was okay. And that, you trying to protect yourself, or my mother trying to protect me from it, is cool, but I need to take responsibility for myself, and immerse myself in the community, and come to an understanding myself. And I think, realistically, if I look at the barriers that are out there right now, I think the biggest thing that I can identify is physical separation. When I lived in the territories, the one thing I noticed right away was that, when I went to high school, the Inuit community, the Dene community, the non-Aboriginal community, they all went to the same high school. Everybody's together. There's people having troubles with addiction, regardless of the color of your skin. We had business owners and so on, working together in the same physical space. And I really think that that plays a big part in the community accepting and embracing the culture and embracing the people. Whereas, on the opposite side, when I moved to Calgary, the first thing I noticed when I came here was that there's this massive physical separation. It's like Calgary downtown and, Tsuut'ina Nation, and these plots of land where people live by themselves on their own. And then when they happen to venture into the city, oftentimes it's not for good reasons, and it's not in a way that I think is representative of who they really are. And so I recognize right away, it's like there's fear. Like, this is all about fearful, because fearfulness about this person that they see walking on the street that they don't know anything about or understand or appreciate. So to me, I just, if there was a way to to bridge that gap somehow, I think it's one of the biggest, if there's any barriers, it's not only for me connecting with them, but also I think for our community to connect to the rest of the world, our country, right? Because I think it's I think all of those stereotypes that we were talking about earlier, I think that's where it comes from, because it's the only time you ever see a Native North American is walking downtown, and they and they don't look like they've been they haven't been home for a while, or whatever your preconceived notions are. That is, in my mind, is it's then all of a sudden you create this prejudgment, and obviously,
and you draw your own conclusions.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
And I get that. I don't blame anyone for that, but I think that one of the things I can do personally is to try to do what I can in my art, and to to with people that I know, to help just celebrate it, right? Because I mean, there's so many wonderful things about the culture that I'm learning, that it's like, wow, that is trippy to understand. It's like Indigenous people had stuff figured out centuries ago that we are just trying to figure out now as a race
for millennium. Yeah,
totally. And so it's just kind of like I think those types of things, I think, to celebrate it, and to I'm always the kind of person, it's like love and positivity to me just trumps everything else. Like, I try not to be bring bitterness or anger to conversations, because I just don't think it's I don't think it's productive. I know that for me there are things that I feel like this, this event that happened in Kamloops, there's a part of me that feels ragey about it, and
how can you not feel that, right?
Yeah.
But love is one of our sacred teachings. And when you talk about bridging the gap and building bridges, you're doing that, I think, by virtue of your existence and doing what you do. The very fact that you're successful and using your platform in the way that you are, I think, is an example of your resilience. Right. And I have no doubt, like when I read your post and I see your following and your connections to the non-Indigenous music community, I have no doubt that people are looking to you as an example, right. And that they don't see, the stereotypes that we've talked about when they're, dealing with you, whether it's in a business capacity or just in an artistic capacity, or just human to human. So for sure. I'm really thankful to you, Troy, for joining us for this Achimotak series. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. It's been really nice getting to know you, and I hope that our paths cross again soon. And I wish you all the success.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and hope to see you guys soon.